In start to finish, the impeachment hearing lasted only 3 hours and 43 minutes, but it will be a permanent part of Texas history. The vote was 121 to 23, with 2 members recording themselves as present not voting. We heard new details of the allegations against Paxton, claims that he not only abused the power of his office, but also called House lawmakers directly and threatened political consequences for anyone who voted against him. Today's hearing foreshadows a likely trial in the Texas Senate. The outcome could lead to Paxton's removal from office. Fox 4's Stephen Dowd begins with a breakdown of what we witnessed today. Stephen?
Truly a historic day in Texas. The impeachment of Attorney General Ken Paxton is the first in nearly 40 years. It triggers a suspension of office for Paxton as he waits to see when the Senate will hold a trial and which senators will be acting as a jury will decide his ultimate fate.
There have been 121 ayes and 23 nays, 2 present not voting, 3 absent. The resolution is adopted.
For the 3rd time in state history, the Texas House voted to impeach an elected official, and the final vote of 121 ayes was more lopsided than expected. 20 articles of impeachment were presented to the House Saturday, outlining claims of abuse of power, bribery, and other forms of corruption by Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton.
The evidence is substantial. It is alarming and unnerving.
Earlier in the week, an hours-long public hearing by a team of House committee investigators laid out details of the alleged crimes by Paxton. The investigation stemmed from a proposed $3.3 million whistleblower settlement with former Paxton employees who said they were victims of his retaliation.
All roads lead to Nate Paul.
Central to the case is Nate Paul, a Paxton political donor under federal investigation, and claims that Paxton provided him documents that the FBI and DPS did not want released. They also say Paxton hired a lawyer with tax dollars who had little experience, created a made-up title, and obtained dozens of court records in reference to an investigation about the Paxton donor. On Friday, Paxton said this impeachment push was by corrupt politicians to help quote President Biden.
Every politician who supports this deceitful impeachment attempt will inflict lasting damage on the credibility of the Texas House, which I served in.
After he was impeached, Paxton said in a statement, quote, "I look forward to a quick resolution in the Texas Senate, where I have full confidence the process will be fair and just." The Republican-led committee revealed stunning new information during their opening statement. Fort Worth Republican Charlie Guerin, who was on the committee, started by saying Paxton allegedly threatened multiple Republican members.
But in less than an hour after the papers were put on the desk, are you aware that the Attorney General himself called members of this House while they were sitting at their desk and threatened them?
I was not advised of that until I heard you say that.
I mean, God bless the poor senators. I don't know how long it'll be if this passes that they're going to have to put up with that same intimidation tactics from a man that does not deserve to be in office.
We also learned a staffer who was with Paxton when he was getting renovations to his home allegedly overheard that Nate Paul, the Paxton donor, was footing the bill.
The whistleblowers now come forward and disclose their information. It is after that that this young man is offered a promotion. He declines, and he leaves the office. After he leaves the office, he continues to get a stipend and a check from Ken Paxton's campaign for $250 a month. He calls repeatedly, says, "I don't want this money, please stop it." It goes on for about 4 months.
23 members voted against the impeachment. Tony Tenderholt of Arlington said the process was rushed.
We've decided our chamber is nothing more than a weapon to wield against political opponents. This body is afforded more time for debating tampon tax relief than we've given to deciding whether to impeach the highest law enforcement officer in our state.
No Republican who voted against impeachment spoke to the criminality of what Paxton is accused of doing.
I am opposed to this resolution, not because I am convinced of the Attorney General's innocence, but because of the leadership of this body made no legitimate attempt to adequately document his guilt, nor demonstrate to my satisfaction that this is anything other than a sham railroading of a political enemy.
A handful of Democrats spoke during the debate. Representative Terry Canales said this wasn't about politics, but about right versus wrong.
Well, there's never a wrong time to do the right thing.
To make things simple, the Senate has until the end of this session Monday to set a date for the trial. If the Senate's leader, Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, does not do that, Governor Abbott will have the power to call senators back. If he doesn't do that, if he doesn't take action, at that point, it goes back to the Lieutenant Governor, Dan Patrick, to call the senators to deal with the trial.
So, Stephen, we, 121 Republicans, or 121 voting in favor of this. One of the Republicans who spoke up, we heard from 4 Republicans during the course of this debate. 3 of them were the ones who were on the committee that actually drafted these articles of impeachment.
Right.
One was Representative Jeff Leach from Plano. I want to take a listen to what he had to say during some of the question and answer phase of this.
Mr. Smithy, are you aware that I, as chair of the Committee on Judiciary and Civil Jurisprudence, held our first committee of this session on March 1st, 2023, in which I extended a direct invitation to Attorney General Ken Paxton to appear in front of our committee?
I can't say that I am aware of that. I may have heard it at the time. And I will say he should have been.
So during that exchange, he was basically complaining about the fact that Ken Paxton did not testify before his committee when he was requesting it throughout this session. What was notable, though, was it was not just Jeff Leach from Collin County, Ken Paxton's home county. It was multiple Republicans from Collin County.
Right, and this has been pitched by Ken Paxton and other Republicans as a Democrat-led impeachment. Now, Democrats may have had the more votes, but 60 Republicans voted to impeach Ken Paxton, and the entire Collin County delegation, which is Ken Paxton's home county.
And why was it so significant for there to be a high number of Republicans? Obviously, they just needed the majority, but why did it matter for there to be so many Republicans who signed on to this?
Right, and it's the optics. They don't want the narrative that this was a Democrat-led anything. And while Democrats, again, likely were in the majority vote, they wanted to send a firm and strong message that it wasn't just the needed 12 Republicans to get this across the finish line. 60 Republicans in Texas, one of the most conservative states in the country, is nothing to just say, oh, this was Democrat-led.
There was one Democrat that did not agree with how those impeachment proceedings were playing out. This is Representative Harold Dutton out of the Houston area.
I do believe that the process, as you've heard from my good friend Chairman Smithy on down, that the process ought to be such that we are convinced that going forward is the best thing for this House to do.
Now, his complaint there was all about process. We heard in your story, Representative Tinderhold had a similar complaint. Why is it important for those Republicans to basically be running that distinction, that we don't necessarily disagree with the findings, but we disagree with how this process is playing out?
And that was a common thread that we heard. No Republican really talked about saying Ken Paxton committed these crimes or did not. They stuck to a talking point of saying the process. There's only been 2 times in Texas history that this has happened. First one in 1917 and the other one in 1975. And so what they're trying to say is, well, in 1975, there were weeks of testimony and weeks of this process. And let alone, let's not talk about what happened in 1917. And so what they are saying is if we want to go through what precedent says in Texas, then it should be a lengthy process. Now, the committee was investigating for 2 months. They did the process approved by the legislature in January, as one of the representatives said. And so that's been their talking point, and this is the result.
Yeah, and as the committee pointed out, rules have changed quite a bit since these past impeachment proceedings. This committee wasn't necessarily involved in it during the other steps of the process. So now that the House side of things is done, this shifts to the Senate. You have a much smaller margin. We go from 150 state representatives down to 31 senators. And one of the interesting topics going forward is going to be Senator Angela Paxton,
right.
The Attorney General's wife, who is an active senator and may be a juror in this situation.
All eyes are on Angela Paxton right now. And as the House was debating impeaching her husband, she was on the floor doing the business of the Senate, them passing bills today. A lot of focus will be on her because, one, she's a juror, duly elected juror. Will she recuse herself? Will the lieutenant governor ask her to recuse herself? All of that is unknown, and all the senators today shared a copy and paste statement saying, I'm a juror now, so I can't talk.
Yeah. And so looking at the math of this, 2/3 required in order to remove him from office. So math-wise, 31 senators. You need 21, assuming that Senator Paxton is voting as a juror in this matter. There's going to be a lot of jostling, a lot of political, as much as this is a legal process that is playing out. We've all seen what happened at the federal level. This is a political process more than anything else. What are the things that you're going to be watching for over these next couple of weeks? We still don't know what the trial date is going to be as well.
The next biggest thing that everyone's waiting on is the session ends Monday, which happens to be a holiday. Right now, Dan Patrick, the lieutenant governor presiding over the Senate, can set a date. It doesn't have to be a trial happening on Monday or tomorrow, which is not going to happen. That is what we'll be waiting for in the next 48 hours. After that, the ball goes to Governor Abbott. And so it's a matter of, I guarantee you those two have had a conversation. We haven't heard anything from either tonight so far, but the ball is in the lieutenant governor's court. So everyone is waiting to see what Dan Patrick, who's very bullish about saying he's in control of the Senate, we're waiting to see what he says.
All right, much more to come going forward. Stephen Dykes, and of course there's much to come, potential legal challenges, a trial date, whether the governor appoints a provisional attorney general in the interim. Stay with Fox 4 for all of the latest developments.